Google printing 520s here. Let's see if it's able to recover or not. Looks like something came out. Widespread, 22 by 28. You're whacking the bids. It's 515, so at the moment breaking lower. You got to hold 525 if you want to set up a bounce. Otherwise, looks like you're going to 500. At the moment, certainly does look like you're going towards 500. $500 will be key. You basically went to 500. You printed 505. See if the dip buyers come out here and defend 500. Get it back above 520s. You know, it's down, but it's not flushing incredibly hard. Got some bidders back above 510. Let's see if you whack out those bidders at 510. You did whack them out, okay. Gonna test that 505 low that you just came off of a little bit. You are down here, no doubt about it, but you know, I'm kind of thinking that it might be able to defend 500 here. Can you get bidders back above 510 or no? At the moment, you can't. There's a couple of them. I tried to buy some at 511.93 to trade versus 510 action. No fill, but I'm on bid 511.93. I did fill trading versus 510 in Google 511.93 versus 510. I think you could get a bounce back into the 520s. You're getting hit here though. We'll exit if you can't hold the 510 area. Did try and exit. Trying to exit 504.30. I did exit. Broke back down below 510. And looks like you're going to test that 500 mark. Although trying to pop back up. You hit 503s on that. I'm intrigued by Google because, you know, you've broken to the downside, but after the first leg lower, you haven't gotten much continuation to the downside. You didn't break 500 there, and you just kind of stabilized back above 510 again. Nice recovery. That kind of looks like maybe it was a fake out towards 500. Coming up towards 520s. Can you get back above 520? That's key. Nice bounce here. So Google, I kind of think buying the dip is maybe the play. We'll see how it continues to shape up. But, yesterday's low on Google was 528, and I think it's going to stabilize back into the 520s. We'll see. Still a lot of time left, a lot more reaction it can do. But if Google was going to flush, I think you needed to break down below 500. So we'll see if it can venture its way back down there. But I like the way it defended that 510 to 500 range. Now, though, it's just a matter of getting 520 stability. 520, 525 action. Let's watch the 515. Getting some 520 bidders here. That's a good sign for the stock. Seems like the market's trying to figure out how high they should bounce this thing. Coming up on 525. I want to see another dip towards 520 and then see if that holds, or even better would just be holding 525. I think you could go green in Google back above 535s. So I like this recovery back above 25s. Seems like the upside trade is the better trade. Aside from those first 5 minutes, Google's been showing recovery. But the key now is staying above 520. No reason to come back below 520 on Google. So let's just see over the next few minutes if it can avoid coming back below 520. If it can, I do think you see this thing back into the 530s, and we'll frame a setup based on that. Otherwise, if you kind of hang out in the 520s, we'll kind of look at a setup based on that 525 area. So we're going to give it a few minutes here, observe, we'll check it out. So you have defended 520 for the most part. You haven't done it very enthusiastically, but you've done it nonetheless. And that looks like the level. If this after hours action here is going to be an indication of tomorrow, it looks like 520 is the level to kind of focus on. 520, 525 off of this. And I kind of think that you can buy the dip on Google versus 520, and that's really just going to dictate things tomorrow. So here we are testing it again, but initial reaction to the earnings was a sell-off down towards 500. But you defended 500 and came back into the 520s. The play to me is over under 520. If Google is holding above 520 tomorrow, then I think it targets upside back towards 530, and then today's close, which will be yesterday's close come tomorrow, you close 536. I do think you could get a red to green move in Google if you can get above that 530 level. I actually think you might see that kind of act as somewhat of a magnet. But the key will be first holding 520. If you can't hold 520 tomorrow, then you can set up to go lower and test the after hours lows that we saw here today. Kind of 518 to 515 was where you just bounced out of. I'll show this after hours chart here really quickly. So this is a 3-minute chart. You can see the big leg down after hours right there, and then you kind of had a recovery, and then this low right here is 518, and then this low here was 515. So kind of 518 to 515 is a little pocket of support. That would be the first support to get tested below 520 if it's not able to hold 520. And then you've got the 510, basically 510 to 500. I know it's a wide range, but that's just the way it is. And below 500, you could really start to flush. Personally, my gut feeling is that buying the dip works. I think Google, kind of sold off ahead of this report. Just if you look at the daily chart, you can see that reflected pretty clearly. Let's get rid of this. Alright. Well, whatever. But you can see that, since late September, you were up around 600, mid to late September, and then have pulled back to basically 500 based on today's after hours session. So, you're talking about a drop of over 10% from that 600 mark, over 15% essentially. So I think maybe, this negative reaction has somewhat been priced in, and maybe that's why the stock is quote-unquote only down 2.5% after hours, as opposed to something like Netflix, which, obviously got killed today. Well, Netflix was holding up pretty well ahead of its earnings report, had just kind of been consolidating in a 3, 4, 5 month channel. So I think that's kind of the difference between Google and Netflix here, and one of the reasons I think, maybe buying the dip works out. Not to mention, even though Netflix got shattered, you still had the better trade on Netflix once the market opened, being to the upside. Right? Netflix buying the dip did work today, and so Google isn't down nearly as much as Netflix. So I think maybe this one you see some dip buying as well. But 520 will be key. You got to hold that 520 area, and then just watch your your zeros and your fives, your 525s, your 530s, your 515s, your 510s, your 535s, your 540s, so on and so forth. But I do think you could see a good recovery on Google back to the upside.